Good afternoon. I'm Nackerman Williams, Director of Special Projects at the Walton Family Foundation. There are a few places in America as vibrant and as vital as New Orleans and the Louisiana coast. And there are a few places as resilient. Time and again, over the past 15 years, this region and its people have been tested. In 2005, by Hurricane Katrina, and 5 years later, by an oil spill. But New Orleans and Louisianans did not fold. They imagined a brighter future for themselves and their children. They regrouped and began to rebuild their homes, their schools, their coastline. Out of disaster came innovation. We are inspired by the creativity and the determination of parents and educators who never wavered in their commitment to increasing access to high-quality K-12 schools that could put their children on a path to good careers and fulfilling lives. We saw that same grit and ingenuity in the coastal residents and locally rooted conservation groups who helped write a blueprint of hope to restore the Louisiana coast. One that would better protect New Orleans and surrounding communities from land loss and the impacts of climate change. As a foundation, our experiences in New Orleans and coastal Louisiana have underscored the importance of staying rooted in the communities where we work, being bold in supporting solutions that will last, and being steady partners with those who are closest to the challenges. The people of this region continue to find ways to thrive and show the world what it takes to overcome adversity.
So when I think about New Orleans, I think about marching in the band, of course Mardi Gras.
We're a city known for seafood.
It was built by the Mississippi River, which is one of the most iconic things in the U.S.
Thomas Jefferson wanted the Louisiana Purchase because he wanted New Orleans.
People love this city for a lot of reasons. You know, the music, the architecture, certainly the food.
You never really leave New Orleans.
He was sure that the key to the Gulf of Mexico meant the key to the trade with the world.
I love New Orleans. I love the soul of New Orleans, the friendliness, pretty much everything else about it.
I have family and friends that live in other parts of the country, and they're always here for Saints games. They're always in town for Mardi Gras.
You know, one of the food activities that pretty much sums up New Orleans is the crawfish boil.
It's a place where we have a unique culture that has taken hold here and is thriving.
Understanding our culture is important to understanding just how much we love and appreciate our schools.
Our coast is what makes New Orleans such a unique place.
Sort of the key to the U.S. exports and imports flows through this Mississippi River, and of course that's a huge economic driver for the city here, for people who live here.
How is culture expressed through your food?
My personal food culture is pretty much of a gumbo, as they say, and I love to cook foods from all over the world.
We are, as all humans, we're completely dependent on water. And in a place like New Orleans, our economy is completely dependent on water.
You know, once a New Orleanian, you're always a New Orleanian. When I think about New Orleans, I also think about our resilience.
What would happen to New Orleans if we weren't able to restore the coast?
So New Orleans is, the impossible city. It's put along the Mississippi River because it was a strategic place. You have the river, you have the wetlands that surround it. And without those things over time, the culture itself will have a hard time keeping it together. The food, the people, it's what makes New Orleans, New Orleans. And as the coastal wetlands go away, we have a system, we have a city that's more vulnerable to hurricanes. And I think we'll see a real big change in the way of life if we can even save New Orleans.
We've had, natural disasters, so many that, you can't keep up with the number.
There is not a person that lives in this city who doesn't look towards the south as we get to the summertime with fear and nervousness, and nobody acts that way, right? But it's there. That's a trauma that's really hard to get over, that takes a toll. It's much deeper than the property that we had to rebuild.
2005, Katrina, something none of us ever expected.
Katrina was a man-made disaster. We had not done the work ahead of time. We had not prepared the levees.
80% of the city underwater.
Had we not insisted on dredging large channels through the coast so that our wetlands buffers, our protections disappeared, we would not have suffered the flooding, which was about 80% of the entire city.
What would be the future for fishermen on the coast as Louisiana and climate change kind of affects them?
On average, right now, Louisiana loses a football field of wetlands every 100 minutes. And so as we continue to have wetland loss, we may see those fisheries begin to collapse over time.
If we don't do anything, we have to do something else, which is move. We have to pack up and we have to move.
New Orleans will become sort of an isolated little island surrounded by levees, so disconnected from our coast. And it's one of the things, our coast is what makes New Orleans such a unique place. The coast will look very different than it is today if we do nothing.
This is home. We're going to stay. We're going to make it livable. We're going to make sure it stays livable, and that's what we're doing now.
It's a story of hope and opportunity, and that's what we have now is an opportunity.
We always, in the end, come together, building plans so that we can be better on the other end. So when I think about New Orleans, I think about our resilience. I think about our ability to always bounce back. I've dreamed of being an educator since I was about 5 years old. I come from a family of educators, so I've always known that I wanted to do this work, always known that I wanted to be a teacher. Any other part of the country that I visit, nothing feels like this. This is home for me. This community really embraces its schools. If you're from here, or even if you visited, you hear about our legacy schools. They've raised up our community. They've produced those folks that are doing great things in the city, nationally and globally. We know and understand how important getting an education, especially, I'll say, speaking from my perspective, growing up African American community, we knew how important getting a public school education was and is to our future. So New Schools for New Orleans is a quarterback organization. So basically, in a nutshell, we provide support to schools, right? School leaders, school teachers, through our programming. We point out and highlight all of the fascinating and great things that happen in our schools every day because it is about our kids. At the end of the day, it's about our kids, it's about our families, it's about our educators.
Mrs. Smith, why do you love running a school?
Well, Arnaldo, I wanted to be a teacher. School was rough for me, really. And I decided in 4th grade, which was my roughest year, to become a teacher in order to help students who were feeling like I felt. I love running a school because I love children and I want the very best for them, and this job gives me the opportunity to do it.
You make a difference in my life, Mrs. Smith.
That's so sweet.
We knew and understood pre-Katrina that as we started to kind of see this shift in more rigorous standards, education standards, we knew that we would need to support our schools. Some of our schools, just to be frank, struggled a bit, right? We did struggle a bit as we saw those shifts. post-Katrina, we've developed our school system to really answer the call as it relates to those struggles. We are resilient. And so the leaders that were here, as we were recovering or bouncing back from Katrina, had to make some really hard choices and decisions about what the framework, what New Orleans public schools would be and would look like. And I think that, they understood that we were struggling a bit before and wanted to make certain that we were putting things in place that would limit or minimize those struggles. And so I think making certain that our system is strong enough to handle whatever comes our way, while at the same time, really on bended knee, figuring out what students need and what educators need, I think that will be pivotal to the next chapter in terms of New Orleans public schools and what it can become.
What do you want people to know about our school, Bethune?
Arnaldo, I want people to know that Bethune is a family-oriented community. And I want them to know that our kids are loved and cared for, and that we treat them as if they were our students, our very own kids. We cater to the whole child, Arnaldo. We cater to their social needs, emotional needs, as well as the academic needs. And that's what I want people to know about Bethune.
My name is Susan Spicer, and I'm chef owner of Rosedale Restaurant and a partner at Bayona Restaurant in New Orleans. My mother was a fabulous cook, so I started off loving to eat, and that's a good foundation for being a chef. So I've been cooking since 1979 professionally, so a couple of years. Cooking has allowed me to travel the world and, to be a judge on Top Chef, which was a lot more fun than being a competitor, I suspect. Well, I think the best thing about the food scene in New Orleans is the range. The fact that, we have fabulous fine dining restaurants. We have some of the oldest restaurants in the country, but we also have amazing little neighborhood restaurants and corner joints where you can find delicious food. Everybody cooks. Food and cooking generally is all about community, family. They like to share. They share recipes. They share food. We use, a lot of local seafood. You make friends from strangers at a crawfish boil table. So I opened Bayona with my partner Regina Kiever in 1990. And then a few years ago, I found this little neighborhood place closer to my home. And it was the building was abandoned at the time, and I was going like, hey, this would make a really cool restaurant. Of course, it has a patio outside. So next thing I knew, I was opening another restaurant. It's a very personal restaurant for me. My husband built all the furniture and the bar, and I cook 5 days a week here and really enjoy it. Well, at Rosedale, we have a lot of signature items, just like any restaurant, but, we've been praised for our New Orleans-style barbecue shrimp, the cochon de lait po' boy, or the bourbon brine fried chicken thighs. People love this city for a lot of reasons. The music, the architecture, certainly the food. People around the country really supported the tourism, actually, after Katrina. People did come back, and they knew it was important to come and spend money, and things were really coming back from Katrina. Everybody's talking about what a resilient community we are, and people in Save New Orleans, and everybody worked, was working together, and then we had the oil spill. And then it was like, now what do we do? Now what do we do? We're known for seafood. We're a city known for seafood. What's gonna happen? The seafood industry is incredibly important to New Orleans, and it's a struggle, it's hard. I say it's hard to be a chef, but I wouldn't want to be a farmer or a fisherman, because there you're struggling against nature And I think we really need to make sure that our Gulf is healthy. I served on the board of the Gulf Restoration Network for many years. After Katrina, I was recruited and, absolutely wanted to get involved. So I think it's really important to protect. So having been through, I would say now, 3 major events in my lifetime, Katrina, the oil spill, and a pandemic, I have to think about what I'm optimistic about when it comes to this city, which depends, has always depended so much on its hospitality industry and, is built around that, really. We will find a way back the same way we came back from being underwater, we love feeding people. We love seeing people come through the door and sitting outside on the patio, and that's what keeps us going. That's what keeps me going.
My name is Alicia Renfro. I'm a coastal scientist with the National Wildlife Federation in our Gulf program, but I work more specifically here in coastal Louisiana, trying to restore Mississippi River Delta. I'm a sedimentologist, so I tell my family I study dirt for a living. That they can understand. What I do is actually look at sediment and how it's transported and moves through the environment and how it gets deposited. What we see in Louisiana is a lot of potential to kind of mimic natural processes but help them along as well. So the Mississippi River Delta is where the Mississippi River meets the Gulf of Mexico, depositing sediment over time and building out this vast expanse of bayous and wetlands. Where we're sitting right now is in a cypress tupelo swamp, and this is an area you see lots of trees around. While this looks like a swamp that's surviving, what we don't see are young trees. There are no more young trees in this area because there's not enough sediment to keep them dry for the period of time they need to. So we have a swamp, but there's no regeneration.
My name is Steve Cochran. I'm the director of Restore the Mississippi River campaign, and then I work for the Environmental Defense Fund, and I'm the director of their Coastal Resilience Program. The Mississippi River built this land. The way deltas work is that rivers begin to overflow their banks when they flood, and they take sediment. And if they do that often enough and regularly enough, they actually build land. It goes up above sea level. That's how deltas get built more than 300 years ago now. We also began to stop that process. We began to put these levees up, which would prevent the water from doing that on a regular basis. We got really good at it, and so we really cut off the river and its sediment. Really the life of a delta, we just stopped that. And back in 1897, scientists said 3 or 4 generations hence, that would be us now, will pay for the damage that will occur. They knew that if they cut off the river from the delta, that the delta would lose in the process. We could have said, wait a minute, we need to do this right the first time, not go ahead and take the benefit, but let the cost fall on somebody else. And we chose not to do it then. We have to do that now.
Since about the 1930s, when we leveed the Mississippi River, we've had a lot of land loss here in coastal Louisiana. We've lost nearly 2,000 square miles since 1932. And that land loss continues today and will continue if we don't do anything. And so what we do at the Mississippi River Delta Restoration Campaign is advocate for coastal restoration at the scale needed to sustain Louisiana for the long term.
Here in Southeast Louisiana, the most important thing that we can do, the best asset that we have to apply to this is the Mississippi River. We're going to allow the river to do what it can do, which is to rebuild some of these areas where we've lost land. And there's these big projects that are called sediment diversions, which are really nothing other than gates that we can control, that we can put in the levees, open them up when we want to, close them when we want to, so that you can mimic the way it used to happen when the water's really high and there's lots of sediment in the water.
Sediment is the lifeblood of Louisiana. It is what built the landscape that we're sitting in today, and it is the only thing that will actually sustain the coastal wetlands needed to protect communities over the long term.
We're really lucky This is a very big river, huge amount of water, huge amount of sediment, and we can capture a lot of that and put it back out there again. So the scale of the river allows us to do these really big things, and it doesn't even make that big a difference to the river. So it's a very great opportunity that we have. The state's fully on board with doing this. They're fully invested in it.
A lot of places throughout the world are going to have to find different ways to deal with climate change. Here in Louisiana, one of our strengths is that we have the Mississippi River. We just have to use it. This, before Hurricanes Katrina and Rita came through, used to be a much more closed canopy of trees. It's far more open now. And so when we think about how we build towards the future, it's about building resilience into the system, making it so the system can recover naturally on its own without having to have a lot of human intervention.
Katrina was a man-made disaster. We had not done the work ahead of time. We had not prepared the levees. We had not built them to the levels that they should have been built. Our wetlands buffers, our protections disappeared. Had we not done those things, we would not have suffered the flooding, which was about 80% of the entire city here.
The natural environment is surprisingly resilient to change and can actually roll with it and recover over time. With oil spills, you'll see oiling of the marsh and you'll see a retreat of the shoreline, but that can dissipate in a few years and you'll actually see the marsh stabilize over time. Here, Hurricane Katrina, you saw a lot of land loss that happened throughout Louisiana's coast, but some of that has recovered, some of that has rebuilt, mostly in areas that get a flow of sediment from the Mississippi River. Those places, land has continued to pop up and repopulate in places that were impacted by the storm. The good news is there are a lot of people who are really invested in helping our coast and actually doing the work that needs to be done, whether it's planting trees or actually recycling the oyster shells that are served in our restaurants in New Orleans, building reefs with those. Because not only can you build a reef that can protect against erosion by waves of our wetlands, but you also build an environment that birds and other organisms can thrive in. Investing in our future wisely is the only thing that will preserve it. You don't have to actually be a scientist to do change in the world and to see something better happen. You can take part. Anybody can find ways, big and small, to actually do something. You don't have to change the world. You just have to change your little bit of the world.
I'm very comfortable that we have the right tools, we have the right people, and we have the right mindset to actually make this work. It's actually based on the reality of what I know we can do. I've seen it in smaller scales. There are lots of places down here that have actually shown how this river can build. And frankly, we're living proof. The land that we're standing on, the land we're filming on here today, is land that the river built. So we know what the river can do. We just have to help it do it. We're going to be able to do that here. We
are living in a moment where we're actually seeing big progress. There's been talk for many years about restoring Louisiana, but now we have the funds, we have the projects that are slated to move forward that can actually do it. We are seeing progress. It's not all sadness. It's a good story. It's a story of hope and opportunity, and that's what we have now, is an opportunity.
Kids coming up today, I'm actually jealous in terms of what we know and what we know how to do, and they'll be able to actually help us do it. So we're handing them this big mess that we've created. And it's all about the next generation. It's all about people learning and then becoming the people who are going to save us.
We have so many students that choose to remain, right, after graduation. And they're our future entrepreneurs. They're our future doctors. They're the ones that are going to prayerfully solve this pandemic, right? They're our future educators. And so the investment that we put into them, we will see the benefits of it, direct impact to our community. And again, some will move on to really shaping like national conversations about healthcare and education. Some will do things at a global scale. And so to know that we have this homegrown population of students that will choose to stay and choose to better New Orleans, that's amazing. But we also know that some of our kids will move on to do things outside of New Orleans. A number of them do tend to come back though.
I was wondering what kind of stuff that people my age could do, so high schoolers and people who are entering college could do to conserve Louisiana and really get into coastal restoration and stuff like that.
So there are lots of things that happen pretty regularly in Louisiana, whether it's like tree plantings or going out and doing beach cleanups. And we also need scientists in the future. We need our engineers. We have an opportunity here in Louisiana to be kind of a testing ground for some of these ideas of how we deal with climate change. And we need young people to learn those lessons and export them to other places, help them become more resilient in the face of climate change.
How can entrepreneurs use their power and position to address environmental issues and make sure that our land, water are all safe, especially for communities of color?
If you can find a way to describe an issue where doing the right thing is both the moral thing to do, but also the money-making thing to do, it'll get done. The reason why we have this coastal master plan in Louisiana now, and we're actually leading all the Gulf states, and I would argue the country, in restoring our coast, is because people realize that saving coastal Louisiana wasn't just about protecting the environment, it was about protecting our economy and our way of life.
Why do you think cooking brings peace to the community?
The thing about food is it's great for sharing. It does have a tendency to bring people together. Here in New Orleans, we love to, like I said, gather around a table full of boiled crawfish and, just talk and laugh. And when you're talking about food, there's a lot more that people have in common. I think they talk about you can find things, the commonalities, and how are we the same? And, but I still love that thing of like, well, here's what I put in my gumbo, or here's what I do with my, and it's just a beautiful way to get to know somebody through the language of food.
What will it take for every student in New Orleans to succeed?
First of all, it will take dedicated, hardworking teachers and staff members together to make sure that every student, every day, get the best education that they can possibly get. It will take all of us working together for one common goal, and that is making sure that we address the emotional, social, physical, and intellectual needs of all of our students in New Orleans.
I aspire to one day to actually be mayor of New Orleans. What advice would you give for me when I embark on my new journey next year?
All of us have to decide what our issue is. And if we decide that's our passion because of our life experience or because of our intellectual interest in it, and we stick with it, it's pretty surprising, particularly in a smaller community like New Orleans, how much impact you can have. It's kind of crazy, but like one person, well organized, with enough dedication, can change thousands of lives. You just have to pick your passion and stick with it.
It was really wonderful to meet you. I really appreciate it. Again, thank you.
Jada, it has been a delight to talk to you and to meet you, and I hope that this is not the last time we're gonna be able to sit face to face, and I'd love to hear more about where you're going in the future. I hope you and your mom will come see me.
Thank you so much for allowing me to ask you these questions and being here for this interview. I'm really grateful for this opportunity, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to ask questions. I think it's really important to have our youth engaged, and you guys are the ones that are going to take over the reins and move this forward and actually help save Louisiana.